Hey, how you doing? I hope you're well. I'm Deanna and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different, probably still going to be long and rambly, so grab yourself a drink, grab some snacks and get comfy. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the books that I'm potentially going to pick up for the Summer of Romantasyathon. This is a readathon that's going to take place over June and July and is hosted by Tori Between Pages. I will leave her channel and the announcement video linked below. She also has a number of wonderful co-hosts who I will also link below. And yes, I love romantasy. I have a lot of it on my shelves and on my TBR, so I figured this would be a really fun way to get to some of those reads. Tori has created a bingo board for us to use, and there's about, what did she say? There is 35 prompts on the board. With this readathon, you can use one book to tick off as many prompts as possible, but I figured I'm a mood reader. I like to have a lot of choice, so I would give you 35 books that I'm interested in reading over the next 2 months. Now, I'm not 100% sure if they're going to cover off every prompt, just because there's some prompts that I'm not 100% sure if they're going to feature. But yes, without further ado, let's get on to the books. I'll probably go completely at random, and just know that there's no rhyme or reason for the order that I put these books in. But first up, I would love to get to Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is a novella set in her Crowns of Nyaxia series. I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night early last year and completely loved it, and for whatever reason have just stalled on the series. This isn't directly related to Serpent, but I hear you should read this before you get into the rest of the series. And this is about a witch named Lilith who is dying and has been dying since the day she was born. Her town is slowly withering from the clutches of what they assume is a god-touched curse. And that's when she decides to take matters in her own hands and find a cure. Now, Lilith strikes a bargain with a vampire and offers him 6 roses in exchange for vials of his blood, which she hopes will be the town's salvation. And I've heard that despite this being a novella, the romance in this is supposed to be really well developed, and the characters are supposed to be really well developed, and it just feels like it's longer. Also, with the idea that I'm trying to get through 35 books in 2 months, this is going to be the perfect length. So very excited to continue on with this series. Keeping on books that are in the series that I'd like to continue, I have Gleam by Raven Kennedy, which is the 3rd book in her Plated Prisoner series. This is also on my 24 books to read in 2024, so it'll also be great to tick this one off. I won't tell you much because this is the 3rd book in the series, but this is a fantasy romance that is a King Midas retelling, and we are following a girl called Oren who is gold touched. So as we know with King Midas, everything he touched turns to gold, but unlike the myth, everything isn't solid gold. So he's been able to adapt his powers to change things gold touch. So the sheets are all gold plated and, you know, flowers and everything like that as well. But Oren is the only human. He has successfully been able to turn gold, and she is still living and breathing. At the start of this series, she is kept in a gilded cage, which at the start she's all for. She has dealt with a lot of abuse and trauma in her past, and King Midas is the person who saves her. So she agrees to be willingly locked away in this cage. Now, when I say cage, it actually takes up like most of the palace floor. So she can roam around. It's a big cage. But when we see her at the start of this series, we kind of get the feeling that while she needed that protection of the cage at the start, it maybe not be something that's serving her anymore. And we are going on an adventure. So in book 2, some political intrigue and some warring nations really started, and we're getting a lot of character growth from Oren. The books are also getting increasingly chunkier, so I am excited to see what's happening in this world. Another book on my 24 books to read in 2024 is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, this is pretty much a staple in the fantasy romance genre. This is the 2nd book in the Blood and Ash series, and I enjoyed From Blood and Ash. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, so I've stalled on this series, mostly because I heard everyone is super disappointed in book 3. But this one seems to be a fan favorite, so yeah, I think I'm going to suck it up and continue on with the series. I'm sure everyone knows what this series is, but this follows Poppy, who is a maiden. So she is supposed to live in solitude, never to be touched, never to be looked upon, never to be spoken to, and never to experience pleasure, and is just waiting for the day of her ascension. From memory, her ascension is supposed to be like this turning point and a salvation point for this world, which is particularly needed considering the fallen kingdom seems to be rising and war is brewing. This is another fantasy romance which does include vampires, which is a big tick. I love seeing vampires back in fiction. It just seems to it seems to be they've moved from an urban setting to a fantasy setting. But yes, I will bite the bullet and continue on with this series. Then we have Slaying the Shadow Prince by Helen Schuer. This was one of the books in the Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers series, which was a series put together by a collection of different authors. This is also the beautiful fabled edition for this book. So in this one, in a realm on the brink of destruction, evil forces snatch innocence to suffer fates worse than death. Only a monster hunter and a monstrous enemy can stop them. We follow Druce Emerson, who is a noble woman turned ranger who wants only one thing: vengeance. Her family has been slain by vicious shadow wraiths, and she is determined to defend her fallen kingdom, which means carving out the hearts of every dark creature she can find. And then we have Talmir Starling, who is a celebrated warrior of the realm, but also hiding a secret that he is half wraith. So he is going to do everything he can to keep his true nature hidden and under control, especially from a woman who's claimed to slay any wraith she comes across. It sounds like they have to join forces and save the world, and romance ensues. So yes, very excited for this one. Also, while I love this edition, can we take a moment to appreciate the original cover? I love that monster romance and paranormal fantasy romance has claimed back the romance clinch cover. It's just so good. Changing tone, my next book is another continuation of a series, which is Kimberly Lemming's Mead Mishap series, and That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. The first one was just a complete joy. Kimberly Lemming's humor is just so wonderful, and I love the cozy fantasy vibes. So I am excited to dive into this one. I believe this follows Cinnamon in the first book, her friend, who is a cheese merchant, which, I mean, I love cheese. I think that's wonderful. And as the title says, she throws a love potion at a werewolf, and I am very excited to see what shenanigans this pair get up to. Then I have Thief of Souls by Beck McMasters. This is the sequel to her novella, Thief of Dreams, which I just devoured and loved this world. So we're following the outcome of the events. And honestly, I don't know why I put a pause on this series, but the first book had this kind of like bachelor vibe. We had 20 brides all vying for the attention and hand of Prince Kia, who is the prince of the Court of Dreams. However, one of the brides might not be who she claims to be. In fact, she is Zamira, and she is his best thief, and he sends her there in hopes of stealing the dragon's heart. Zamira, all she wants is her freedom, so takes this job in hopes it will finally break the binding hold the king has over her. But when she gets to the Court of Dreams, she realizes that this mission might be more dangerous than she'd bargained for, and she must soon make a decision between her freedom or her heart. So yeah, I completely adored the first book. I actually might reread this before diving into this one, but I am excited to figure out what happens to Samira and Prince Kia and close off this series. A 2024 release that I am dying to get to is My Dark Beast by Olivia Wildingstein. All I know about this is that it is a Sleeping Beauty retelling meets Hades and Persephone, and literally that was all I needed to know to add that one straight to my TBR. So we have Taryn Hayes, 33, real estate mogul, mob lord, most eligible bachelor in New England, God. And then we have Halfling Bloom, who is 24, college graduate, drowning in debt, designer shoes, and she's a true crime podcast addict, which I love. because I love a true crime podcast. If you also like true crime podcasts, let me know what your favorite one is down below. And she is a florist. Although she's not living her best life, she is enthusiastically pursuing her dreams. And in her dreams, especially since a recent flower delivery debacle, they all feature none other than the lethally private Tristan. So yes, I am very excited to get into this one because who doesn't want a Sleeping Beauty / Hades and Persephone retelling? That sounds incredible. Next up we have Crimson Skies by Jaime and Eve. This is another sequel that I am dying to get to. This is the sequel of Gilded Wings, and this is a portal fantasy that follows a girl named Morgan who is single-handedly living her best life and the life I want, which is she is a librarian at this special library called Dangerfield Library, and everything's going fine. She is spending the days with her best friend, and while the library is a little strange, she doesn't bother to ask any questions until she receives a call in the middle of the night to let her know that one of the books in the special collection has gone missing, and she gets roped into this magical fantasy fae world to try and figure out who stole the book and why. And it was just so good. We have, his name was Danger or something like that. He is one of the fallen fae and is considered a god in this world, and he is almost like the sun god. He is very prickly and feels very otherworldly, and I loved getting to watch him thaw out and watch their romance bloom. So the ending was wild, so I'm excited to figure out what happens to that, what's happening with the world, and figuring out what happens to Morgan and her HEA. After completely falling in love with Kate King's writing earlier this year when I picked up By Any Other Name, I am excited to add to my TBR Lords of the Hunt, which is the first book in her Wild Fae series. I don't know much about this one except that it's a fantasy romance, which is also a Why Choose romance, which yes, please, I would like more of that. It says their games will change her, their love will ruin her. Lonnie Skyborn is a human servant bound to the immortal court until a cruel fairy tricks her into killing a high fae king, and she finds herself next in line for the throne. That sounds so good. The series isn't finished yet. It's a 4-book series and the 3rd book just came out, and from what I understand with the why choose element, it's quite slow burn and she seems to be picking guys up along the way. So that sounds weird, but if you've read a Why Choose, you know what I mean. So imagine being that person and just like living about your best life, and then all of a sudden you were the next in line for the throne. How stressful, but very excited to get to that one. A fantasy romance absolute staple that I haven't read and is on my TBR is Radiance by Grace Draven. This is a bind-up of Radiance and Aldean, which is the first 2 books in her Wraith King series. I know this book is much beloved, especially by Ava from Ava Reads Romance, and what I know about this is we follow an arranged marriage between essentially spares to the royal family. So we have the niece to the human king and the spare to the high throne, and they are forced into a marriage of convenience to essentially broker a peace alliance between their people. And from what I hear, it is a beautiful slow burn friends to lovers romance. And in fact, I think the fantasy elements don't really kick in until book 2, and Radiance really focuses on our characters getting to know each other and slowly falling in love with each other. So at the start, both parties aren't particularly attracted to each other because they're different races, I guess, different species. And then slowly after their friendship forms, they form a very beautiful romance. And I've heard wonderful things about Grace Draven's writing. She has been on my TBR for a long time, and she's very much a rainy day author for me. So I'm excited to have an opportunity to prioritize this, because one of the prompts is to read a friends to lovers romance, and that is not common in fantasy romance. So yeah, I will definitely be picking up Radiance. I would also like to get to When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Can we take a moment to appreciate this cover? All I knew about this one was that we had dragons in a fantasy romance setting, which really just sounded right up my alley. So this one follows Rave, who is an assassin for the rebellion, and her job is to basically complete orders and never get caught. However, when a rival bounty hunter shatters her world, she finds herself captured by the Guild Nobles, a group of powerful fae. And then we've got Khan Vigor, who is a dragon rider who has been crushed by the grief of the loss of his greatest love. He took the head of the king and donned his melted crown. That's kind of giving me like Khal Drogo vibes, and is now on a tireless quest to quell the never-ebbing ache in his chest. A cure leads him into the capital's high-security prison, where he stumbles upon the imprisoned Ray. Yeah, I am very, very excited. I've heard some people have said the writing is a bit hard to get into, but I personally love a lyrical writing style, so I'm sure I'm going to absolutely eat this up. And can we just take a moment? Look at this. We've got a map. This beautiful dedication page. Look at these chapter headers. Stunning. Yeah, I'm excited to figure out where the dragons come in, but even then from the setup, it sounds like we've got political intrigue. I'm excited for the dragons. Speaking of dragons, I have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros on my reading list. I will hear no shade or shame thrown upon me for not having picked this book up yet. I'm aware I am the last person on the face of the earth to have read this. I wanted to wait for Iron Flame to come out before I dived into this because I heard the cliffhanger in here is pretty intense. I'm sure you're all aware, but this is a fantasy romance following a girl named Violet who has spent her life believing that she is going to join the scribes, who are the, historians and archivists of this world. However, her mother sounds like a hard ass and is a dragon rider and declares that no child of hers will not become a dragon rider. I've heard amazing things about this. It's supposed to be super captivating. It's got a Hunger Games divergent vibes to the world. So this world's kind of built into like different classes. Obviously, we've got scribes, we've got dragon riders, and there is quite a deadly element to the dragon riding school. And Violet in this has a chronic illness, which is why she was going to go for the scribe like her father rather than the dragon riders. And yes, there's also apparently a man called, what's his name? A man called Zayden I've been seeing everywhere, and I'm excited to meet him. Everyone seems to be in love with him, and I would like that chance too. And this book is 100% going for the prompt, a book that everyone's talking about. I then want to get to The Last Lost Girl by Casey L. Bond, and this is a fantasy romance Peter Pan retelling, which sounds incredible. We are following a girl named Ava who is basically struggling to keep herself and her sister Belle alive. This is made extra difficult by the fact that Belle seems to be slipping further and further into insanity each day, raving about shadows and this second star she can see in the night sky, and about an island called Neverland. And everything goes kind of horribly wrong when Belle and therefore Ava are taken up and transported to Neverland, and Peter at this stage is all grown up and has done some rather not nice things to rule the island, and he sends the Lost Boys after Belle and Ava. Ava luckily escapes into the arms of a charming man with a silver hook who is promised to help her find her sister and save her from Peter and the Lost Boys. And I just love the sound of this. And I think with the Peter Pan story, there's a lot there where you can play on that can go super dark. So I'm excited to see Casey's take on it. And then we have A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stasia Stark. This is again another beautiful fabled edition, and I have heard wonderful things about this series. This is book one in her Kingdom of Lies series. I think there's 4 books out. I'm not sure if it's finished, but if I love this, there are more books to dive into. So in this world, it seems to be that when humans are born, the gods take what little power they have been granted in return for protection from the vicious fae. And the humans who somehow manage to keep their powers are considered corrupt, and they are hunted down and burnt. And when our main character Priska's forbidden power is discovered, she is forced to flee her tiny village and her family to save her life. She is not equipped to be on the run and to survive, so in a weak moment, she makes a deal with a ruthless mercenary. This deal seems quite simple. She is to help him and his friends get into the city, and in return, he will also help teach her how to use these powers, which hopefully means that she can survive. However, this ruthless mercenary is hiding secrets of his own, which might cause everything to crumble. This sounds great, and I've heard wonderful things about this series, and I'm excited to see what all the fuss is about. Next up, we have Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Roach. This is the first book in her Legacy series. I've heard this one is dark, like very, very dark. I think Stephanie Bookish recently read this in a vlog, and yeah, she had mentioned that it is seriously dark and deals with a lot of mental health. So in this world, the gods have their favored children, which create these legacy families, and the gods feared that they were going to become too powerful, so created a hidden realm among the stars. And the gods gave the legacies basically the best of their worlds, and then they left in a sworn agreement to basically never interfere, in hopes of making sure that their children will kind of ignore the fact that they could overrule the gods, take over the other world. Basically, in this world, the Fae are forced into servitude and are required to provide for the legacies in more ways than one. And every 5 years, all the eligible Fae are gathered up for the selection, and they are basically assigned to serve one of the families. It's supposed to be a great honor, but this is the first time in a millennia where all 6 kingdoms have heirs choosing a source, which will be from the Fae. And my understanding is we're following a Fae woman called Tessalin, who has no interest whatsoever being chosen to be a personal source or be chosen to be a source, however, ends up being chosen. And this book is basically following her coming to terms with that, and we learn more about the world. So really interesting premise, and after hearing Stephanie talk about it, I am excited to dive into this world. Next is a very new addition to my overall TBR, but once I heard about this on Miss Pizza's Reads channel, I couldn't help but want to dive straight into it, and this is Peaches and Honey by R. Rita. The way she described it is as if R. Rita and V.E. Schwab were in the same writing class where they were given a writing prompt, and it has supposedly be very similar to The Invisible Lives of Addie LaRue thematically, except in Peaches and Honey, we get to see more of the main character traveling throughout time. So we start off in England in the 12th century, and we follow a girl named Anna. She's basically used to hunger and hardship, and she has spent a decade struggling to survive alone. Then, in a single act of kindness towards a beautiful stranger, the taste of a divine peach changes Anna's life forever, and she is essentially granted immortality. So she watches the world change around her, knowing that every human connection she makes is going to be purely temporary, and there is only one person she trusts to always return to her no matter the distance, which is the shape-shifting god who granted her immortality. So I've heard that this is very slow burn and low steam, but I just loved Addie LaRue, and to get a book that even has a similar vibe of a woman who is immortal and this on again off again relationship with the man responsible for her immortality just sounds so good. The temptation to ignore my entire reading plans for May and pick this one up is super high, so definitely expect this one to be in my June wrap up. And then we have Lullaby Scars by Holly Manns. This is an author who I've had on my TBR for the longest time, and this is the first book in her Warriors of the Five Realms series. So this is the prequel novella, and I hear it has pirate vibes, which I'm always here for. We are following Lady Mellon's escape from her tyrannical father. Basically, all she has to do is fake her magical prowess long enough for the High Mage to sign a marriage contract and whisk her away. So she is forging a marriage to get away. Then the plan is basically marry this guy, lie about her powers. The minute they're married, she gets to leave her father. She's going to ditch the husband and start a new life. I love this woman already. But the last thing she needs is the tortured bondsman mistaking her for a woman who works on her back. And then we have Killian, who is a scarred hero, and at this point in time, scars are all people see and notice of him, but with his horrific past, he really doesn't want people to get too close. He has resigned himself to basically living as an indentured slave to a powerful high mage until a chance meeting with a temptress outside a brothel, hence maybe the feelings that our lady is a lady of the night, teaches him to want more. So this sounds so good. I love that meet cute, and these characters sound like they're going to be a lot of fun, and add in a forced proximity on a pirate ship. I can't wait to read more and finally dive into this world. And then we have Between Two Realms by Mazin Al-Amiz, who is another Indie-Australian author, and I am so excited to finally get to this one. The buzzwords that got me to instantly add this to cart is that this is a portal fantasy into a fae world. However, the portal is in Melbourne, Australia, and I just think that is amazing. Yes, to more Australian settings. And in this one, we are following Sophie, who is an epic fantasy bibliophile and a lover of all things magical. So following a bad date, she stumbles into the fairy realm, and what she finds sets her world into a tumbling mess of fantasy and adrenaline. And I just love that concept. Imagine that. You're reeling from a horrible date and then you end up in another world. So yes, book 2 just came out as well. So I am excited to pick up book 1 and then I can dive straight into the sequel. Then we have How Does It Feel by Janine O'Reilly. This one I first saw from Jess from the first chapter books, and all I know about this one is that it is on the dark side. It is very dark fantasy romance. I believe we also have another portal fantasy in this one. So we are following a human who is really fascinated by the fae, and in particular, as she's grown up, has become obsessed with a particular moth. And one day while she is foraging for mushrooms that attracts this moth, she ends up finding herself falling through a fairy portal right into the arms of the unseelie fae prince. To make matters worse, he is not convinced that she is merely a biologist, but is convinced that he is an assassin the humans have sent to kill him. So I don't know, our boy sounds paranoid as hell. And basically, because of this assumption, he is determined to kill her first, as he wants to rid himself of this human who he is becoming increasingly obsessed with. So he wants to kill her, he's obsessed with her, he needs to entertain the villagers, so challenges her to 3 deadly trials. If she survives, she gets her freedom, and if not, I guess he gets what he wants. So yes, I've heard this one is very, very dark, and I know Jess loved it, so I'm excited to see how I feel about it. I think this is another one that recently got picked up by a publisher. I will most likely pick this one up on audio, and the sequel is already out. So again, if I love it, I can dive straight into book 2. We'll keep on the dark fantasy romance train for a little bit with our next book, which is White Horse Black Knight by Evie Macru, which is the first book in her God's Kiss Bride series. This one follows a woman named Sabine who has been locked away, and her only friends are the animals that she's able to communicate with her magic. She has been sold as a bride to a villainous high lord, which is her greatest fear, that she's basically trading one prison she's in for another. And her only chance at escape lies in the form of her gruff, but he's gruff, but he is handsome, guard, who is incredibly loyal to the High Lord that she's just been sold into marriage. And I just know that this has been drawn from inspiration from Lady Godiva. So for whatever reason, this horrible High Lord deems that she must ride across the country completely naked before they can get married. And his huntsman and guard, Baston Wolf Valborn, is basically been assigned to her protection and has to transport his master's new bride across the country. Again, she is stark naked for whatever reason. And there is also an ancient creature's awakening along the borders, and he is torn between his duty to his king and his desire to investigate what is happening. Basically says, welcome to Astagon, a kingdom of cruel games and corrupt courts, where the only thing more dangerous than the secrets slumbering underground is falling for the one person you can't have. I've heard interesting things about this one, and book 2 is out. Again, we're seeing a trend, and I will say it again because I've said it once before. If I really like this one, I can dive into the second book, or it's just going to be me starting a bunch of series in the next 2 months and which I will get to in next year or the year after. Next on my TBR is Curse of the Wolf King by Tessonia Odette, and I heard that she is absolutely the queen of fairy tale retelling, so I am excited for this one. No surprise, looking at the cover, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and this is her first book in her Entangled with Fae series, which I believe is like a interconnected standalone series where we follow different fairy tales. I'm pretty excited because I think we have like a Raven Prince, there's a Selkie, so I'm excited to dive into this world. So we've got Gemma, who wants to leave her past behind and forget the day the scandal broke her heart, but she is captured by a trickster Fae King who threatens to hold her for ransom, and she will find herself at the top of the gossip columns once again. So this is also giving me like Regency romance vibes, which is just, it's something a little cozy. Basically threatened that she'll be at the top of the gossip columns once again and her social reputation in ruins. And then we have human-hating King Elliot, who is plagued by a curse that will soon claim his life. King Elliot is willing to do anything to save himself, so Gemma is hoping to use this to her advantage, so she might bargain her way to freedom. But all she has to do is help him break his curse. And yeah, this sounds like it is going to be a wonderful time. And again, if I love it, we've got more books in the series to dive into, so that's always exciting. Another audio book pick I have is A River of Golden Bones by A.K. Mulford. This is the first book in a new series, which is the Golden Court series. All I know about this is that it is giving me Sleeping Beauty vibes because we have a sleeping curse, a fallen court, and a secret twin. So we have twins Calla and Briar, and they've basically spent their entire lives hiding from a powerful sorceress who destroyed their kingdom, and also from the humans that don't know that they are wolves. So each twin has their own purpose in life. Briar is to marry the king of an allied pack and save their court, where Calla is basically supposed to remain hidden. She is her twin shadow and she is the backup plan. So no one knows who Calla is except for a childhood best friend and her sister's betrothed, a prince. But, you know, when Calla and Briar are journeying out to the wedding, that's when plans go awry and the evil sorceress is back with a vengeance. So yeah, Calla's got to step out of the shadows to save her sister and the kingdom and their legacy. So this sounds like a really fun time. I'm excited to see this one. I'm not sure if this one is like fantasy world with wolf shifters or if we've got like an urban fantasy setting. With this one, I tried to be conscious of the fact that I wouldn't pick paranormal or urban fantasy because in my mind, fantasy romance and paranormal are two separate things. But if this one is a blend of the two, I'm gonna take it because I'm really, really excited to read this one. Speaking of a book that I think is gonna toe the line between paranormal and fantasy romance, we have The Cursed and the Broken by Chloe Hott. This has been on my TBR for the longest time. Like, look, I absolutely love this cover, and years ago the Dark Queen was executed by witches. Her cultists hunted down like rats and forced into hiding. So this sounds like it's going to be so much fun. We've got cults and witches. So we've got Kitani, who is a witch and the shepherd of her flock. So there we go, we got the cult vibes, and she's always been different. There is darkness in her blood and she has a destiny that far reaches beyond their small village. Corruption is spreading and whispers of cultists stir throughout the woods once again. She is betrothed to the heir of the Wolfblood clan and she risks not only her heart but her life. United, they must stand against the cultists or watch the kingdom of Hungary fall. This sounds great. It says, cursed by death, controlled by fate, Kitani is forced to meet her demons or die by them. Very excited. I love the sounds of this. It sounds dark. I don't know, this cover with the star and the knives, it just gave me supernatural vibes. So that's the reason I bought it. Another fairy tale retelling, we have Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is the first book in the Beast of the Briar series. It starts off as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's a why choose romance. So we have 4 beastly princes, 1 awkward bookworm, an enchanted world of fae, magic, and danger. It feels like he's got to help break the curses of these princes. So while it does feel like Beauty and the Beast, it also gives me kind of like Wizard of Oz vibes where Dorothy's got to help the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, and the Scarecrow, you know, get the stuff they want. So yeah, I've heard great things. I think, honestly, take a shot for every time I say I've heard great things. But this one was massive on TikTok. I think the first 3 books are out, and I think it's a 4-book series. So I can't go past a fairy tale retelling and a Why Choose Romance. So this was a no-brainer to add to my TBR. Then we have The House of Bane and Blood by Alexis L. Maynard. I have got the Fabled edition coming my way. I cannot wait to get my hands on it because it is stunning. This one skyrocketed to the top of my TBR after I heard that it had Peaky Blinders kind of gangster vibes, which just reminded me of the Prince of Prohibition by Marilyn Marks. So instantly had to get to it. So yes, we have a city that's split into 2 opposing sides. Camilla is the heiress to the most notorious family in this city called Lynchhaven, and is basically doing all she can to keep her family's syndicate, the Iron Saint Railway, from slipping into bankruptcy. And when the gorgeous and depraved leader of a rival family offers to pay off the police force in exchange for her hand in marriage, she has no choice but to not only give up her throne, but her name, to marry him to protect the family. And then we have Nikolai Atano, and he has his own reasons for wanting to broker peace between the 2 families, as a serial kidnapper known as the Collector has been ravaging the streets of Ramet Row and stirring up mistrust between the descendants and the natives of this city. And if Camilla can help restore the safety in his streets, he'll have no need for her or her family's company. They've got to find this Collector, prevent a war between the 2 sides of the city, and pay off the family debt all before she turns 21. And if Milla can fulfill her end of the bargain, she'll walk away with more freedom than she's ever had before. So yes, I am so excited. It's set in a post-industrial age and on this magical island, and definitely gives like Peaky Blinders with the razor gangs in London, but with a magical system that's kind of giving me like Six of Crows vibes, but with an adult romance. And God, I don't know why I haven't picked it up earlier. So this is the first book in her Order and Chaos series, and book 2 recently came out. But I just love this idea of, let's pick a fantasy romance, but let's set it in a place that isn't medieval Europe. So having kind of that post-industrial razor gang vibes, and we've got like a crime syndicate happening as well. I am obsessed. Another dark fairy tale retelling, we have Her Dark Reflections by Haley Jade. This is one I picked up when I went to the First Chapter Books opening, and Haley Jade was there signing. This is the first book in her new dark romantic fantasy series, and it is a dark reimagining of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is the one that I've seen a lot. But from what I've seen on the back, but I don't think Snow White is the main woman in charge. So we've got Rianda, who hungers for power, and her charm has always been her sharpest weapon for hunting it. She's left scarred after a brutal attack, and in desperation, she makes a deal with Draven, who is a magic-wielding stranger who is compelling and incredibly dangerous. She knows she can't trust him, but when he offers to make her queen, the temptation is too enticing to resist. So she is armed with a glamoured face and an enchanted apple, and she is determined to scheme her way to the crown, even if it means risking a deadly punishment for unsanctioned magic use. But Draven is playing a bigger game, and she is but one piece on his board, and that sounds incredible. It looks like it's a Snow White retelling, but from the point of the evil queen. I can't wait to dive into this one. And she signed it to Here's Women Behaving Badly, because, you know, support women's wrongs. And then we have Of Light and Darkness by Shane Leeton. This actually might be the book that's been on my Kindle Unlimited TBR the longest, and it's really about time that I read it. It says it's for fans of The Labyrinth and Spirited Away, which is why I instantly added it to KU and haven't left it because it's since left KU, so I've got it sitting there. So we've got a mortal girl who has no magic of her own, and she traverses into the world of monsters hidden among the ancient secrets of modern Prague. She is ensnared in the thorns of a political war between light and dark, and raised by monsters she learned to love, Charlotte finds belonging, but only if she can face her worst fears. Welcome to the occult city, but mind your throat. So this has got Slavic folklore, we've got found family, it's giving me, obviously we've got Pan's Labyrinth, Spirited Away, but it's also giving me a Daughter of Smoke and Bone vibes. So yeah, I am very excited about this one. And this is the first book in a trilogy, possibly. It says 3-book series, but I think this is potentially the only book out. And if that's the case, I will be very sad. Nope, the second book's out, Of Blood and Magic. So yes, I am excited to dive into this one. Another one that I added to my Kindle TBR, I'm Nothing But a Simple Girl, purely based on this cover because that cover is stunning, is How the Fox Runs by J.O. Alice. So I clicked on it because of this cover, and it stayed on my TBR because of this line. Elise, an inmate at an asylum for the criminally insane, wants nothing more than a life of freedom in the forest she loves. She is charged with murder of her lover, but she is convinced that she's been framed. Motivated by this belief, she manipulates, cheats, and steals her way out of the asylum, only to be captured by a mysterious acquaintance who claims his intentions align with her own. And together they embark on a path of betrayal that distorts the very fabric of her reality. And she is basically thrown into a realm of opulent balls and fanciful invitations that defy the laws of science. And she's got to choose between, death or accepting an aid from the very man who betrayed her heart. She still just wants to get back to her forest and out of this strange new world, but it says that it's a mind-bending journey for fans of Erin Morgenstern and V.E. Schwab. So I think that sounds wonderful. I think it's going to be a bit trippy and definitely different to the other books on this list. And then we have Avalon Tower by C.N. Crawford and Alex Rivers. From memory, I think this has like an Arthurian vibe to it, but Avalon Tower is a spy academy, which sounds amazing. A spy academy in a fantasy setting. So basically the rules are spy on the Fae, resist falling for your mentor, and try not to die in the process. So that sounds so good. Our main character was just hoping to go to Europe on a vacation, to read books, drink champagne, live her best life, but ends up being kidnapped by a arrogant and lethal and cannot forget incredibly sexy fae named Raphael. Turns out that she has some magic powers and needs to fight the next evil Fae king. Next thing she knows, she's thrown into Avalon Tower at this elite spy academy, and there in this gothic halls, she is thrown into cliques, snobbery, and brutal competitions. That sounds great. I love the idea of a spy academy for the Fae. I mean, what more could I ask for? And then we have Prisoners of Silk by Lydia Foxglove. I first saw this on Maggie from Maggie's Books and Stuff channel. She raved about it when she read it. And this is the first book in the Queens of the Sun Palace. And all I know is that this is a fantasy romance, which is loosely inspired by Sleeping Beauty, but is heavily inspired by Marie Antoinette. And I just love the idea of the opulence and the danger of the French Revolution with Fae. So yeah, that sounds incredible. And I think from memory, what Maggie said is that Lydia has been able to weave together Marie Antoinette's life super seamlessly, seems to be very authentic, but it has that feel of Versailles, but in this Fae setting. And it's also another short one, which is also good. We need some shorter books on this TBR, but I'm excited to finally pick this one up. Another portal fantasy, I'm pretty sure, is Into the Wonder Dark by Lillian T. James. This is a dark Why Choose Alice in Wonderland retelling, and tick, tick, tick. Do I need to know anything else? No, I just need this. This is all I need. All I need in my life. Are you seeing? I don't need to know a lot before I add a book to cart. I've heard wonderful things about Lillian T. James. I met her at Rare. I picked up one of her contemporaries. I don't think this book was out yet because otherwise I would have 100% pre-ordered it and added it to my collection. Instead of Wonderland, it's called Underland, and we have the Crimson Queen instead of the Red Queen. And yeah, I'm excited to see Lillian's take on Alice, which has to be one of my favorite fairy tales. Another new release and sequel I'm squeezing onto this TBR is The Throne of Honor and Blood by J. Bree, which is the second book in her Mortal Fate series. And this is a seriously slow burn, heavy enemies to lovers book. So this follows Rook, who is a witch, and the last of her coven. She is the favored child and the witch of the woods. After her entire family is slaughtered, she ends up going to the Northlands to escape her fate, which is that she has been fated to mate the savage prince of the Unseelie Fae, who is quite harsh and is known to be a witch hunter. After spending years in the Seelie Court battling monsters that were created because the king had decided to turn against fate, she is back to the Unseelie lands, ready to buckle up and do what fate asks of her. And the first book was super long. I loved Rook. She is incredible. Our boy Soren has a lot to grovel for. I understand that there's a lot of prejudice on his side that's been like built in against the witches between what's happening, but what he does to Rook and what she continually does to prove her worth and help the Fae, I'm expecting a massive grovel in book 2, and at this stage I can't even see how they are going to get from enemies to lovers, but it is going to be a 3-book series. These books are massive, like they're over 500 pages, so I am just excited to get back in, see what my girl Rook's doing, and figure out if Soren is going to apologize. Because that's all I want. And another book that's been on my KU TBR for a very long time is Daughter of Blood by Anne Bishop. Now, I read Anne Bishop's The Other series, which was fantastic. I loved her take on a paranormal romance. This is the start of the Black Jewel series, which is considered one of, I guess, the first fantasy romance books out there. This was published in the late 90s. I don't know much about this except that it's supposed to be a staple in this genre, and basically the Dark Kingdom is preparing itself for the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, the arrival of a new queen, a witch who will wield more power than even the High Lord of Hell himself. But this new ruler is young and very susceptible to influence and corruption. Whoever controls her controls the darkness. Now 3 sworn enemies begin a ruthless game of politics, intrigue, magic, and betrayal, and the destiny of the world is at stake. So it sounds wonderful. I really love Anne Bishop's writing style and her world building, and yeah, I've heard great things about this, and I'm excited to see what I think about it. Next up is Halfling by S.E. Wendell, and I first heard about this book and this series and this author from B from Mama Needs to Read Romance's channel. She just was absolutely raving about it, so I instantly had to add to TBR. And this follows a half orc, half human Auric, and basically he feels like he belongs nowhere. He's spent his entire life trying to prove himself to a clan who despises him just because he's a halfling, and he is the son of a deposed orc chief and a human captive. So he's doing everything he can to prove his worth to his clan, that he is a worthy male, a strong hunter, and a potential mate. It's going well. He's living on the fringes of the clan until everything goes awry when a human woman who was captured just like his mother was years ago. And basically his choice is to stick with the clan or save and protect this human girl. And I believe love ensues. The tagline here says, a human and a halfling, lives ripped apart, brought together by coincidence or fate. Running for their lives, they may find the most dangerous place is together. Yeah, I'm excited. S.E. Wendell has a lot of backlists, so if I really love her writing, I have more to read. And then last but not least for this very lengthy TBR is Blood Mercy by Vala Roth. This is another book that's been on my TBR for the longest time, and it's the first book in the Blood Grace series. I've heard that this is quite a slow-moving fantasy series, very character-focused, and we have vampires in this series, but they're called Hesprians, and they're not the evil of the world, which we see in a lot of other fantasy romances. And our human girl, Casa, is seeking out a Hesprian to escape her father, the king, who's horrific. And if she finds out that she is bargaining with a Hesprian, she knows that he will execute her. So she is speaking to the Hesprian diplomat to negotiate an alliance to save the kingdom. He must negotiate with mortals who hate him just purely for being a Hesprian. She's different though, and the politics aren't why she is captivated by Lo, and he wants more than her blood, and he can't resist the temptation, and he will provoke a war trying to prevent it. So definitely heard that this is super slow burn, and slow burn on like the politics, the world building, just a very slow moving fantasy romance. And this is another one I picked up on audio because it is almost 800 pages. It's a lot of pages, and I can listen to it quicker than I would be able to read it with my eyeballs. That is my 35-ish books on my TBR for the Summer Romantasyathon. I'm a mood reader, so I might read all of these, I might read none of these, I might read some of these. I'm hoping that I'll read some of these because I am excited for all of them. If you want to see which ones I pick up, please like and subscribe. I'll be posting new videos every Sunday. I will link all the channels I mentioned below in the description, along with information about the readathon and the books that I've mentioned. Also linked below are my social media channels if you would like to follow me or message me on any other corner of the internet. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite fantasy romance is. Is it any of these I mentioned? Is it something different? Let me know. I can always add more to my TBR. I am easily convinced. I will change my TBR based on a single buzzword. So leave your best below. Or you can leave me the castle emoji or the dragon emoji. Anyway, that is all from me today, guys. I hope you're doing all kinds of well, and I will speak to you soon. See ya!